it's the higher value food processing end. Currently all protein for food processing is imported in Ireland, so there's a massive market there for us to exploit, and especially when we see trends in diets, there's obviously a focus towards more plant-based diets. We've seen a 72% increase in global plant protein sales.
The Teagasc Crops Open Day took place in Oak Park a couple of weeks ago. There are still really nice compliments coming from the industry about how much people enjoyed the day, which is always good to hear. In this show, I will bring you another flavour of some of the parts of the Open Day. You are listening to the latest episode of the Tillage Edge with me, Michael Hennessy. We would really appreciate it if you could listen, follow, and give us a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from. In this, the second of 4 shows from the Crops Open Day, this show will focus on protein crops. I first caught up with Ciaran Collins to set the scene and then chatted to Sheila Alves, a researcher in bean agronomy, about intercropping protein crops. From there, I chatted to Sinead Fitzsimons, a researcher in the U-Protein project, to chat about adding value to proteins, and finished off by talking to 2 PhD students, Antoine Pichon and Jamie Lee Carter, about chocolate spot and bruchid beetle. But first, let's hear from Ciaran Collins, a tillage specialist in Oak Park, to set the scene about protein crops.
I suppose really what we're trying to exploit here is getting higher value for what we already grow. So the example I use is feed barley. Most farmers here today are growing feed barley. And if you can grow malting barley, you're adding value to something that you already grow for very little cost. So I suppose that's the target of projects like U-Protein and Valpro Pro, which are trying to exploit those non-feed added value opportunities.
So is that, Ciaran, then just in it, because I see a couple of things here, there's bread and burgers and that. Is it into the likes of bread and that kind of thing, or is it to more high value ends of it?
It's the higher value food processing end. Currently all protein for food processing is imported in Ireland, so there's a massive market there for us to exploit, and especially when we see trends in diets, there's obviously a focus towards more plant-based diets. We've seen a 72% increase in global plant protein sales, from the period of 5 to 21. So there's huge markets there, and there's also the whole climate change. There's probably a focus on lower consumption of animal-based, diets and that, and increase in plant-based diets. So there is a big market there for us.
The market is ripe for it out there at the moment. So in terms of Ciaran, in terms of increasing the value of the proteins, how is that done?
Well, I suppose the likeness that I use is if you think of dairy processing and maybe some of the work that goes on in Moore Park with milk processing over the years and extracting proteins there. It's like applying those technologies to protein crops and extracting those looking at the amino acid profiles and seeking out, which are favourable for food processing industry. And we're seeing a lot of varieties grown here today at the Open Day, and there will be hand samples taken. Those will be analysed for amino acid profiles and see which fits best the food processing markets.
So can these processes concentrate those so they can be sold on individually?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what people will have heard about today with Valpro Path and the likes of U-Protein.
Thanks very much, Ciaran. And now I'm going across to Sheila Alves to talk about bean agronomy, especially intercropping protein crops.
Faba beans are the crop that is mostly grown in Ireland for as a protein crop. But in areas like Carlow, we have sandy soils, and now we have these dry spells, plus the high temperature, and they are not really conditions favorable to grow faba beans. There's a penalty in yield with the flower losing in flower and losing of pods at setting. So we look at peas because peas are usually perform very well in sandy soils, and they are more resistant to drought. But peas have this problem of standability. And when
they fall over, you mean?
Yes, they lodge when they are almost ready to harvest.
Okay.
And what we thought was if we mix a little bit of faba beans with the pea crop, then the faba bean stem is strong enough to act as a
Scaffolding, yes.
Scaffolding, yes, and the tendrils of the peas will grow around it, and then the standability of the pea crop increases. So what we are looking at, having a pea crop with a window of harvest that is higher, longer.
So, but then in fairness, you're going to get a mixture then at the other side of peas and beans out the far side. So I suppose there's two questions really in that. One is that will they harvest at the same time? And two, it's all mixed up in the tank. How have you got a solution to get them out separately?
So the first question, it's all about varieties. If you select a late pea variety and an early or very early bean variety, you will get that synchrony where the two crops ripe at the same time. In terms of separation, if we're looking for rations, you don't really need to separate for feed. But if you're looking for separation anyway, there's technologies like dry separation that can do this very easily.
Okay,
so the solutions are there.
So you also have some lupins and some other very colourful crops there. What's the story with those?
Yeah, so we are looking at, and this is long-term solutions. If the climate does change as expected, we are looking at crops, again, legume crops, grain legume crops, that can grow in marginal lands and are more resistant to drought. And that's why we are trying several varieties of lupins that have high protein content, and also lentils.
Okay, so hopefully they'll come into some sort of a crop in terms of you find the right varieties first, I presume, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
I then jumped across to talk to Sinead Fitzsimons to talk about adding value to protein crops.
So we're taking the proteins that are grown and then we're extracting what we were calling protein concentrates, isolates and flours, and we're treating them as an ingredient. And as you put them into the food sector, we're using them to gel products, to add viscosity, to add nutrition. So that's all adding value as we go along the food chain.
And how does that work? Is it a matter of just grinding them up and sieving them out, or is it a bit more complicated?
No, so for flour, we can grind, we dry them, then grind them, and we can produce the flour. This flour then can be used in bread, so in U-protein and in Valpropat it will be used as a substitute for wheat flour in bread and look at the increased nutrition. And also then you can go along, do an extraction process which will increase the concentration of protein. So then once we have the increased concentration, the value of the protein is increasing.
And how far can you increase the value of that protein?
We can increase the protein content up to 90%. So within U-protein,
from about 25%
up to 90%.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is that directly go into some food products, or how does that work in the industry?
So directly into some. So we could use, say, the flour, put it in as a substitute into your breads, look at the characteristics of that, up to, say, sports nutrition, where you're looking at a protein isolate, you're looking at a pure protein. So you're a pure protein, and you're looking at the amino acid profile for that.
Are there any companies out there working with you to try and make that happen, if you like, on the ground?
Yes, we have companies involved in both projects that are, I suppose, providing the pull factor. So they're giving us the feedback to be able to say what they want in the product. So what processing they need, what characteristics they need in the protein.
Which is really good. So currently they're developing products on the back of that,
yes,
which will hit the shelves in shortly, if you like.
So they're tying in with our research.
I then went and talked to Antoine to talk about bruchid beetle in beans.
Only the larvae is a problem. They will feed from the seed, so they will dig a round hole on the seed, and when they will emerge, it will create a big hole, and that makes him impossible to sell if you have too high pressure for the international market.
Okay, so what are you trying to do here now?
So I'm trying to know the level population in the country, and I'm also trying to find a different way to manage the bruchid beetle with pesticide resistance, checking the pesticide resistance, or checking how lure to attract the bruchid beetle.
So this is your early into your work at the moment?
My first year.
First year, so you don't have any great results yet?
No results.
Are you looking for anything come back from farmers to give you some samples or anything like that, or are you going out yourself to the field?
Yes, we give them a trap suit they take a picture of the trap at the end, it's sticky trap, so I can count the number of bruchid beetle to know where the population pressure is higher or lower in the country. And then they will give me a few seeds, and I will be able to see the impact of the bruchid beetle, how many are still in the seed and how many emerge from the seed.
And are you looking for any more farmers? If there's a farmer listening today, could a farmer get in contact with you even for next year to participate in what you're doing?
Yes, I'm looking for more farmers. So we get collected more farmer today, and the goal is to represent as much as possible all the production farmland.
Okay, so it's a clear message. If you're a farmer out there and you have bruchid beetle problems, or you want to know where it is, get in contact with your local advisor, and we'll get put in touch with Anton here. Anton, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
And now we chat to Jamie Lee Carter talking about chocolate spot in beans.
I'm doing chocolate spot studies on faba bean, which is one of the main diseases affecting faba bean production in Ireland. And we're looking for resistance genes that can be incorporated in future breeding strategies.
Okay, and see from your board here, Jamie, you have different virulence by the look of it in terms of different leaves. What are you finding out there at the moment? Have you got some results already in?
So we have some results in from the detached leaf studies in the lab. So we're testing 200 lines of faba bean, and we found that some varieties are showing very promising resistance traits. Unfortunately, these seem to be varieties that are not going to necessarily perform really well in the Irish climate. So the aim of this study is then to move that on to a GWAS, a genome-wide association study, to look for those resistance genetic markers that can be used in future breeding strategies to incorporate those resistant traits into existing durable varieties that are already performing well here in Ireland.
And in terms of them not performing well, they're not performing well from the point of view of they're not suited to climate because they're not yielding, or is it some other reason?
So yes, we tend to find that those were kind of varieties that are putting more resources into being resistant to diseases. They may not have as much resources, so we're finding that those are smaller varieties, lower yielding varieties, or they may have less resistance to some of the abiotic stresses that we're seeing here in Ireland.
Okay, and have you, this year in 2023, have you been in a lot of crops? Have you seen much chocolate spot?
So here in the middle of Ireland, in Carlow, Kilkenny, Dublin, we have very low disease pressure. But in Cork, it seems there's very high disease pressure this year, and I've been sampling fields in Cork this year to try to characterise the chocolate spot disease that we have here in Ireland.
And in terms of that characterisation, are you going all the way down to the genetic end of it, in terms of knowing one's slightly different to the other, different strain of it, if you like?
So yes, in terms of species, we have 4 different species of the pathogen actually contributing to the disease in Europe, and we're not sure in Ireland which of those species are contributing to high pressure disease. So we know we have the main host-specific disease, Botrytis fabae, and what we're trying to find out is if those other 3 species are either opportunistic, so less of a problem, less to worry about, or if those species are causing the disease in their own right, and they're something that we need to worry about for the future.
Okay, so you're, 3 years in now, are you?
Yeah,
and
that's
so
right.
Hopefully next year then we'll have a better idea of the better varieties, and we'll have a much deeper understanding about chocolate spot in general.
Yes, I hope so.
So that's it for this week, and my thanks to Ciaran, Sheila, Sinead, Antoine and Jamie for joining me on the show. Next week, the show will continue to focus on the Crops Open Day, and we'll talk about establishment systems, cover crops, and the signpost tillage farm programme. Finally, don't forget, if you enjoyed the podcast, then recommend it to a friend or colleague. And as always, rate, review and follow on Apple or Spotify so you never miss an episode. And for more information, go to teagasc.ie. I'm Michael Hennessy. Thanks for listening. I'll be back next week with more tillage news and advice.